How do you screw up an election?
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
I've always thought this Iowa caucus thing is weird anyway, especially in these times when politics is so divisive. It's awful hard if you're taking a stand, on a candidate and you're not with the neighborhood momentum and you own a small business perhaps and you're reliant on, network and community to stand up. The old days, it was kind of a cool thing to stand up and, fight for your right to party, that people could separate your political views from your community role or your business role. These days, people are afraid of their own shadows, and so I've always wondered how long the caucus thing is going to happen in Iowa. Now, I think the joke is going to be, how many Iowa Democrats does it take to screw in a light bulb after this situation? Because holy mackerel. Timing being what it is, Joe Fleming, our pollster, is here tonight to talk to us about it. I'm looking forward to doing that. Lots to cover this evening. Great to have you in. Thank you for tuning in. This is the local story that's got the journalists in Target 12 percolating a little bit. First of all, no black mold found in the State House offices. Okay, so the office of the JCLS, the Joint Committee on Legislative Services, had the whole place torn up last week. We covered it in depth, the last part of a saga that is still evolving, well, up until today, last part, where the offices were cleaned out and the representative of the Republican Party, the minority leader, who has sued Speaker Mattiello and the Joint Committee of Legislative Services, of course, he is a part of the Joint Committee on Legislative Services. Have you noticed that I'm going down in the camera, that my chair has jumped twice? If I just sink all the way down, it'll be a new television first. Hold on a second. Okay, here we go. Hey guys, can we fix the chair? Anyway, hopefully we'll be okay. We're casual here. Anyway, it's hard to concentrate when you're ad-libbing a show and you're, right? Anyway, anywho, point here is that the JCLS is a mess. The Speaker of the House is clearly under investigation. I'll tell you why in a minute. The mold thing, I don't know. They were clearing out the offices because someone said, "Oh, black mold." Now we find out that after remediation, there was no black mold, maybe a little mold. And I got to contrast that with stories like we see in the Providence school system, where those poor kids and teachers are in the midst of, asbestos and mold and rats and bats and elephants and everything else they got going on there. Those kids don't say, "Oh my God, there's a little bit of mold," and have the whole classroom torn up, do they? Double standard, perhaps? So the story today is that the administration did their own testing and found no black mold. Now, the administration likes to stick it to the JCLS because that's the administration, the governor, and the speaker. So they got that whole thing going on. But the bigger problem surrounding the JCLS and the Speaker of the House is this convention center audit ordered by the Speaker of the House a couple of weeks ago, then rescinded after attention came to it and after his minority leader, member of the JCLS, the Republican Blake Filippi, sued the Speaker. You got to go back to places like this show on foxprovidence.com to see the whole travel of the case, and on WPRI.com. Target 12 has done an amazing job on that. The new news today, subpoenas have been issued, reportedly. Ted Nesi is reporting out as we tape here at 1:05 in the afternoon that 3 subpoenas have been issued. Now, don't get your pennies in a bundle over this. This is about people telling stories, not under indictment. Subpoenas are different than indictments, right? But the grand jury has been active. 3 members of the convention center and or the general management of the dunk have been called in to answer questions, most likely about the pressure that they reportedly felt from the Speaker over this entire thing. It gives you a clear indication that the Attorney General is involved in this case. And so that is the latest on that. And my chair is stable, so we're in good shape. Speaking of movement, headline, Senate getaway after the impeachment vote. They can't wait to wrap this whole thing up tomorrow. Of course, the president would have liked to had a clear lane for his State of the Union tonight. If you're watching at 7:30 here on this broadcast, Are we on at 7 or 7:30? Yeah, 7:30. Oh, I forgot. State of the Union's coming. If you're watching this at midnight, you watched or suffered through it. Here's the latest from the network on the whole kit and caboodle.
President Trump is expected to tout his accomplishments during tonight's State of the Union address.
Getting USMCA across the finish line, a trade deal with China, still focusing on border security and immigration, trying to move forward with prescription drug costs, all the things that are important to Americans. The president's been focused on those things.
White House officials have advised the president to look forward and not wade into impeachment. The president has railed against the process, and the GOP-led Senate is on track to acquit him in a vote tomorrow afternoon.
What he should do is tell the country what we can do to work together on some major projects, but I'm afraid we'll hear kind of a chest thumping. Hope I'm surprised.
With an acquittal expected on both impeachment charges, at least one Democrat is looking for a way to still send a message to the president that asking Ukraine to investigate a political rival was wrong.
Censure would allow this body to unite across party lines and as an equal branch of government to formally denounce the president's actions and hold him accountable.
Senator Joe Manchin's censure resolution could attract moderate Republicans who've also denounced the president's actions but say they don't rise to the level of impeachment.
I cannot vote to convict. The Constitution provides for impeachment but does not demand it in all instances.
Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell can block a censure resolution from even coming to the floor for a vote.
Okay. Amidst all of that, Trump's higher than he's ever been. Gallup poll, 49%. Joe, explain the world to me, please. By the way, do you fix chairs?
No, I don't do
you're
chairs,
good.
Dan. Sorry about that.
Actually, we did a nice switch there during that story, so we're in great shape.
Well, let me just say this. It's been a great 24 hours with Donald Trump right now.
Between Ira and this situation, holy cow. Did I say Ira good for Rhode Islander? Between Ira, how do you spell that? Let's stay on the impeachment thing for a second. Get your take on it when it comes to how the country feels. I mean, everything kind of works together. What is your? This is not necessarily your statistician mindset, but just your acumen for politics in general. If censure. Censure could come out of this not as part of the impeachment trial, but as a post-game to all of this. Do you think it will?
I don't. I don't think Senator McConnell will let it come to a vote because Donald Trump has been saying from day one, "I've done nothing wrong," and if I've done nothing wrong, there should be no censure. So I don't think Senator McConnell will let that come to a vote. I think that's a dead issue. I think that's going to be the way one or two Democrats could vote against the conviction by saying we would support the censure. Joe Manchin, who we just saw in the tape, would be one of those type Democrats who's from a state that Trump won by like 26%.
Right. I mean, he's a conservative Democrat.
Right.
West Virginia is a conservative place. Interesting politics there. He's looking for a safe place to land in this whole thing.
But I don't see this coming to a vote at all. I'll be shocked if it did. It's an election year. Trump keeps saying, I'm totally innocent. I did nothing wrong. So why would he have the Senate go with a censure?
Remind me of my own civics, our own civics. Either house can censure.
I think so. On the House side, it could be different.
Yeah, the House could censure.
Yes, definitely.
But there's no sense in the House censuring because impeachment is the Holy Grail, and they've already gone past censure. So why come back and censure?
That does make sense.
It's the Senate's censure option to say, listen, we're going to take a lower rung
to save face.
Murkowski, Alexander, two Republicans who at least made public commentary about it's clear on its face that he has done something terribly wrong here.
My guess would be if you got it to a vote, a majority of the senators would vote for censure. The problem is it's not going to come to a vote. Mitch McConnell will not let that happen. Keep in mind, he's up for re-election this year also, in a state that's very much Trump support. So I don't see that happening, Dan, at all.
Here's a dumb question. Does anybody ever do the right thing anymore?
Well,
or are we so driven by your expertise, meaning poll numbers, that it's all driven by pollable calculation versus looking yourself in the mirror?
I always remember back when Mitch McConnell was the Senate Majority Leader, Barack Obama was president. He basically said the last year, nothing Obama wants is going to get through because we're not going to help him get reelected. And nothing got through the Senate those years. Think about all the judges that were blocked. The Supreme Court judge, he stopped everything back then. And the politics right now, unfortunately, has gone that way. It's not back to the old days of Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan where they would sit down at night and work things out. You very seldom get a lot of bipartisan support anymore. Very seldom.
And by the way, when we dig into some of this Gallup polling data, my brief read on their narrative today is that this country has never been, what we know is true, but it's really, really, in these numbers, has never been more statistically apart.
Yes, no question about that. The country is definitely divided, and like we take Donald Trump for example, people either love him or they hate him. There's really not much in between there.
1% no opinion in this poll.
Right.
You never get that.
No. You had 49% saying Donald Trump's done a favorable job, 50% unfavorable, 1%. As I said, people's minds are made up on Donald Trump. And that's what's going to happen in the election. A lot of people's minds are already made up. There's not a lot of minds to move.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk about the Democrats and that mess, and then we'll try to put the whole puzzle together. Stay with us. It's an app, technology, but not a whole caucus. Not a whole election. Here's what the network had. You probably now know the results of the Iowa caucus. We're taping in the early afternoon. I don't say that with any confidence, by the way. They said late this afternoon they might have the numbers, but here was the story up until midday.
Today marks the beginning of the end for Donald Trump.
Iowans were out in full force to caucus for the Democratic candidates last night.
I felt like we were in a piranha tank and everyone saw that we were up for grabs and people are cheering and trying to get us to come.
But results were delayed. Democratic officials blame unspecified quality checks amid reports there were problems with a new mobile app.
They felt like the app was freezing or that they would get to a certain point in the app and it wouldn't let them adjust the numbers to finish reporting the delegate count.
Some precinct chairs tried to call in results but were left on hold for up to an hour.
All of our representatives are currently busy.
Well, it looks like it's going to be a long night, but I'm feeling good.
Without knowing who won, candidates took their own victory laps.
We are going on to New Hampshire victorious.
So I'm just going to tell you what I do know.
You won!
The Trump campaign released a statement mocking the problem, calling it the sloppiest train wreck in history.
It's feeling a lot like Florida 2000. I mean, I shudder to say it.
The Democratic candidates say they're focused on what's important, beating President Trump. And they say they saw enthusiastic turnout that will help them do that in November.
The heart of America is so much bigger than the heart of this guy in the White House.
The race now moves to New Hampshire, which holds the first in the nation primary next Tuesday.
Tell you, Joe, Amy Klobuchar, who I think is a really viable candidate by stature and presentation in politics, not by polling data yet, right? Did a smart thing last night when they finally were running out the string around 10 o'clock and was unknown whether they were going to get any numbers. She just jumped out there and grabbed some primetime space.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
She was smart getting out there. There's no results. She can say we did better than expected in Iowa, and we're moving on to New Hampshire. Keep in mind, New Hampshire, she's only getting about 6-7% of the vote at this point. So she has a long ways to go. And there's other candidates out there who are also campaigning where they weren't campaigning in Iowa. So it'll be a little bit tougher for her.
All right. Notwithstanding numbers by the airing of the show that might be out, I say might be out, let's focus on this debacle and what its residual problems are going to be, not only for the party but for the candidates. And does most of America see the two as the same?
Well, I think what we're seeing for the candidates is the candidates who did well last night really want to get that bump today to head to New Hampshire to really be building up. And candidates who did not do as well, who expected to do well but did poorly, really got a little saving face. They're not getting killed right now for the fact they did not do well, if that makes sense. The candidates can just keep on moving until all these results come out. And then what's happening now, the voters in this country really aren't going to be focusing on the results. Everyone's past Iowa. All they know is it was a real mess last night and there's no results, and that's what people are going to focus on. It's going to take a while for the Democrats to get past this. I think it's going to really have the National Committee take a look 4 years down the road. Do we want to go with caucuses anymore? Are there too many problems with the caucus? And are you limiting the amount of voters? Because if you're working second shift, you probably didn't vote last night.
I'm not sure that everybody really understands what a caucus is. We're pretty conditioned to just going into a voting booth and making a vote. But this is literally a physical movement of your person, your body, in a cafeteria or a gym or a town hall or whatever. And you say, in that corner is Buttigieg, and that corner is Klobuchar, or Biden's over there. And you walk to those places.
Exactly.
And sit and chill. And
it takes a couple hours. When you're going to vote, it takes 10, 15 minutes. And you've got to basically say who you're voting for publicly. And then if your candidate doesn't get 15% of the vote, you have to go and form with one of the other candidates. So you really don't support your own candidate anymore. So it's a very difficult process. Nevada basically modeled theirs after Iowa, and they're using the same software package, I understand. That may change between now and the 22nd, but they do a lot of the same types of things.
It's probably outgrown its usefulness.
I really believe so. And if that's the case, Iowa probably will not be first anymore, because New Hampshire likes to be the first primary. And the Democratic National Committee has always kept New Hampshire as the first primary. So I think about all the money that's spent in Iowa over the last year for a state that really doesn't reflect the whole Democratic Party in this country. I think, you know, they may get pushed out of the way.
And it has, if you look at it, it has a liberal flavor to it. It's very white and it's very liberal.
90%, 91%
meaning the
white.
Democrats in Iowa, who are the minority of people in Iowa, by the way. So figure that out. I want everybody to get that. Democrats are a minority in Iowa, and the Democrats who make up the composite are 90% white and leaning liberal.
Well, let's put it this way. Of the people who, the entrance polls last night show 66% of the people who came in to vote were liberals.
Because they're activists.
Exactly.
People who will stand up and be physically present from their point of view tend to be activists.
And there's also more young people who were voting yesterday than the past years. The entrance polls show like 21, 22%. Past years was like 18%.
So you're telling me that, you know, come tomorrow as these numbers settle in, most likely to be reported between the time we tape the show in the early afternoon and people see it, that the numbers will mean nothing to people?
I don't think they're going to mean that much. I think people
because
will
the credibility of the process has been so damaged?
Well, that somewhat, but also they're moved on now. They're in New Hampshire. They're campaigning. The winner last night wanted
but
to
there'll be coverage of the numbers.
There will be coverage, but last night you want to have the prime time acceptance speech saying that you won the Iowa caucus, trying to get a message out there.
Gotcha.
You lost all that media now. So now you're on to New Hampshire, and it's going to be Wednesday before anything really starts moving again. So, I mean, now you're 6 days out from New Hampshire.
So does it change the calculus that a guy like Joe Biden has got to be top 2 or 3 in Iowa than New Hampshire in order to be sustained for his run out of South Carolina and then to produce
Joe Biden has the firewall in South Carolina. He's well ahead there. We don't know where he finished last night. We don't know if he finished 3rd, 4th, 5th, whatever, but it does not look like he finished 1st or 2nd. Based on what I'm hearing from people and the candidates themselves, it sounds like Bernie Sanders and Pete Buttigieg did very well last night, based on their own numbers. And a lot of these candidates have their own precinct captains that report, so they have an idea what's going on. Joe Biden has to hold his own in New Hampshire, and then he has to go to Nevada.
What does that mean?
I think he needs to run 2nd or 3rd at the worst in New Hampshire. In Nevada, he's running about even with Bernie Sanders. He has to stay even with Sanders in Nevada, then pick up South Carolina.
But does a 3rd in New Hampshire for Biden? It's less damage because whatever the Iowa, if he was 3rd or 4th in Iowa, then 3rd in New Hampshire, he looks leaping into South Carolina, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now Iowa, because it was so damaged, maybe when I heard him, but it does hurt Biden in the fact he needs money. His fundraising has not been that strong this whole campaign. And if he finished, say he finished 4th in Iowa, and now he finishes 3rd or 4th in New Hampshire, that's not going to be good for him to raise money, because Super Tuesday is a lot of money.
Joe is convinced this helps Donald Trump. I think there's one more guy it helps too. We'll talk about it when we come back. Stay with us.
And folks, we got to let them know who we are. We choose hope over fear. We choose science over fiction. Unity over division. And compassion over cruelty. And maybe most importantly of all, truth over lies. Folks, we're going to do this, I promise you.
It's getting hotter and hotter right now for him.
Donald Trump is in a position to laugh out loud at this. And the little things that usually would disrupt a president, I mean, there's been only dozens and dozens of them. This Instagram video of him kind of dismissing the national anthem at the Super Bowl, which has been running around. It's just, you know, there's the First Lady, honorable, the whole thing. He's jerking around, blah, 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 blah. People are like, yeah, whatever. I mean, there's nothing else that can happen with Donald Trump in 2020 that would diminish his base, it seems.
No, he's been impeached, and now his latest job rating's up.
But the disgust, though, the disgust factor is pretty clear.
Right.
Even though the 49% say that they think he's favorable, 34% say they're locked in on voting for him. So there's some gap there.
There is a gap there. The thing with him, as long as the economy stays good, I think that really puts Donald Trump in a good position.
All right. So I think the folly of this Democrat, I mean, it makes Democrats look silly. These candidates have no responsibility for this whatsoever,
No,
but the
not at all.
party looks silly to America, and Iowa looks just embarrassingly inept. Here's the thing. Michael Bloomberg has been sitting this thing out, spending copious amounts of money, and is national pollable near 10% at this point,
They're moving
right?
up. Absolutely.
What do you think?
Well, the man's spending millions and millions and millions of dollars to get a message across. He's aiming at March 3rd. There's like 1,650 delegates available March 3rd. That's where the air war starts. The ground war's over. And he has the money for the air war. He's moving up in these states right now. And I think if the Democratic Party keeps, the candidates keep being muddled right now, like Iowa looks like, and New Hampshire's close races, he could be in a decent position to do some damage on March 3rd and really mess this race up in the sense where there's going to be no clear front runner.
I know it feels like it's cheating, and it's, you know, I like the cheating in the sense that you don't go through the process, you know, the hard work, the organizational stuff, all of that. But you know what? All bets are off. What Donald Trump has done to the politics of today, disruption might be met with more disruption.
Absolutely. But the thing to keep in mind...
Meaning a guy can pay for his own way to take him on.
Keep in mind, these first floor primaries, there's only about 150, 160 delegates at stake. You need 1,991 to win. So what Michael Bloomberg's doing is aiming where the delegates are, where the Democrats are, and that's what he's aiming at March 3rd.
You dare to guess whether we'll have a broker convention?
I think in the end we'll end up with a nominee on the first ballot, but you never know. Keep in mind, the super delegates don't vote till the second ballot. So if there's a second ballot, you never know what's going to happen.
Meaning the party power decides who's going to be the nominee.
That could absolutely...
Weird.
Only on the second ballot, not the first anymore.
All right, Joe. Thanks. Crazy stuff. Final thought when we come back. It makes you wonder about the integrity of elections. Or maybe it doesn't. Maybe it's just a simple technological application problem. But it's going to cause secretaries of state all across the country now to start vouching for the potential protections that they have put into election 2020. Even here, interestingly enough, we pursued the Secretary of State for a question on the radio today, and it was likely that she wasn't going to join us because she didn't want to confuse the matters. Everybody's confused. Why not join the fun? Expertise on the Senate tomorrow as they wrap up impeachment. We'll talk to you then. Good night.